Joining us right now, KT McFarland. She's our national security analyst. She spends a whole lot of time over on Fox News, cutting through all of the nonsense and telling us exactly what we should be doing overseas. So no better person to have than KT.
Well, you got to have a clear voice on this, and then KT is always very clear about what she thinks.
Yeah, and especially in contrast to what we're seeing from our administration
Too
right
bad
now.
you're not working for this current administration.
KT McFarland, I want to start you with this. I don't know if you even saw it because it happened late last night on the West Coast. Hillary Clinton at a fundraiser, because, that's where she goes these days. She compared Vladimir Putin's actions in the Crimean Peninsula to Adolf Hitler. Seriously, she said, the fact that he's out there giving out passports to anyone in Ukraine who speaks Russia is very reminiscent of what Hitler did to under the guise of protecting German-speaking people in Poland and in Czechoslovakia at the time. Does this sort of raise the stakes for Obama's response? Because his former Secretary of State says there's a modern-day Hitler on the loose.
Well, I think she's separating herself from what looks like a pretty failed and collapsing foreign policy. So that's an interesting political position to be in. But she's absolutely right. That's what Hitler did before he went into the Sudetenland. He said, everybody who's a German, ethnic German, you got German citizenship. And then he goes in and says, I'm not invading, I'm protecting Germans. And that's exactly what Putin did in Georgia in 2008, the country of Georgia, where he said, all ethnic Russians in Georgia, which is on the Georgian-Russian border, he said, all you guys, you're Russian citizens, and I'm just going to send in the tanks to protect you from any kind of, harassment you're getting or discrimination, et cetera. And that's what he did this week. He said that the ethnic Russians in Ukraine, and they're almost all in eastern Ukraine, and in Crimea, he said, you're now Russian citizens. So what he's gone in now, and he claims the high ground morally. He says, I'm going in for humanitarian reasons to protect Russians. These are my people. I've got to go in and protect them.
I think you'll agree with me, KT, that the Russians are not known for picking up on subtlety, that you have to be very direct and very bold and make simple declarative statements. One remembers Ronald Reagan saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Right.
And the whole thing that this current administration seems to be saying is,
we're hoping.
They're just hoping that the Russians, that they'll do the right thing. And when he's not hoping, he seems almost incomprehensible, the Secretary of State does.
Who is it?
Well, the problem is they're pompous. They're pompous and they're preachy. And they think that they're the hip guys, that somehow foreign policy and world events are going to change because they're in charge now. So when President Obama or Secretary Kerry says and scolds Putin to say, look, you're acting like a 19th century guy. We're in the 21st century. We don't invade each other in the 21st century. What, somehow human behavior has changed because you guys took over the White House?
Yeah,
for millennia, people have invaded each other.
What is that to say, this is 19th century thinking? Well, we're in the 21st century, and it's happening now.
On your watch.
Like that. Yeah.
No, I think it, and what it does then is it just gets the Russians back up. I met with a senior Russian official very close to Putin right before Christmas talking about Ukraine and talking about American-Russian relations. And he said, the Snowden thing, once you guys said, you got to give him back or else, he said, we were sort of pushed into a corner.
Yeah.
He said, that's the sort of thing, we could have dealt with it, we could have given him back, we could have sent him somewhere else. But you guys, by the time you come and preach to Putin, who doesn't, who feels very strongly about his position in the world, and his position not as a good guy, but as a strong guy, you really don't do that.
Well, is that why they're being so mealy-mouthed, that they don't want to put him in a corner that they can't get out of?
No, I think you mean the administration?
Right.
I think they're mealy-mouthed because I think they're mealy-mouthed.
Right.
All right, so now yesterday, the Russians, apparently it was on the books for a long time, but they did an ICBM test yesterday. Now, if you listen to folks in our administration, they're currently saying, well, we got notification of this some time ago, this was always on the books, was always planned, but was there a message being sent here?
Yeah, let's kick a little more sand in Obama's face. Look, Putin has been on a 15-year plan. You go back and look at his graduate school dissertation that he wrote in the late 1990s, and he said Russia lost its greatness because of its economy. Russia's going to reclaim its greatness through its revenues that it gets from oil and natural gas. We're going to use natural gas to get Europe's dependent on us. We're going to sell oil at high prices to get the revenues we need to build our economy, to build us up again. And he has carefully followed that 15-year plan. Yeah. We got no plan. Our plan is, ooh, you're so 21st century. And now President Obama even adding sort of even another foolish thing where he's drawn yet another sort of red line in the sand where he's saying, we're going to have sanctions. But guess what? You're going to be the only guy who has them. And it's not even clear we're going to be able to do the sanctions. The Europeans aren't going to join sanctions against Russia. They can't. They get their energy from Russia.
Yeah.
They have economic ties with Russia. I mean, so at the end of the day, what's the big administration response going to be? Obama's going to probably boycott the G8 meeting. Ooh, I bet Putin's scared now.
Well, and that'll actually give the stage to Putin unchallenged there at the G8. KT, let me ask you this, because we've been talking about this, of course, for the last week or so with our great WMAL listeners, and I'd say 1 in 25 callers call in and say, you guys are misreading this whole thing. Putin was invited in there. The president of Ukraine was overthrown by an angry mob of neo-Nazi fascists, and who are we? He was duly elected. Who are we to jump on board with this puppet government? And respond to that, because you're one of those crazy warmongering neocons, KT McFarland.
I'm not a neocon. I'm an original con. I mean, I think look, I'm not in the least bit hesitant about using force overseas, but I think you use it only when it's in defense of a vital American interest, and only if you're going to win. The neocons don't do those two things. I mean, they go in, they don't win, and they don't go in for vital national.
But to the larger point that these people are sorry.
Well, look, there's something to that. Not a lot, but there's something to that. The majority of the population of Crimea is ethnic Russian. They're not unhappy. The head of the Russian Navy the Ukrainian Navy defected to the Russian Navy last week. So there is a little bit to that, and that is certainly what the Russians are using as their justification.
Okay, and KT, I understand CPAC starts tomorrow.
Wait, you're coming down?
You're doing a panel, right?
Moderating the major foreign policy panel.
Yes.
Tomorrow at 3:30. We've got some great experts to talk about what the post-Obama foreign policy should look like, which is really exciting because I was part of the post-Jimmy Carter foreign policy.
Well, there's another thing on your schedule, I understand. Drinks with Brian and Larry afterwards.
Yeah, but don't you guys think you're giving me the bill?
Wow, what a diplomat you are, KT McFarland. Well, it's funny. Everybody thought that this CPAC was going to be the first chance for conservative politicians to be able to sort of test the waters for their presidential run. I think foreign policy, KT, the fact that you're moderating this panel, because of the actions in Russia and Crimea right now, this is going to be a major talking point all weekend long at CPAC.
Yeah. Get your tickets early.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, KT, it's always a pleasure to have you. And by the way, I've noticed that the Chinese and the North Koreans and a lot of other bad actors are sort of taking advantage of this moment. Don't you see that happening?
If your adversaries are busy beating each other up, don't try to get in the middle and stop them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Listen, KT, thank you.